buy it, play it, and be like, why am I playing this? I'm just going to go back to XDefiant. And that's what you want. That's when you'll know if XDefiant wins. Where's the short term? Where's the little dopamine hit within the game itself? Something that you can kind of look towards, keep track of. Like I remember playing back in the day, and it was always like, you know, if you're trying to get a helicopter or a Harrier strike and you're 1 or 2 kills off, you start to play a little bit more cautious. You know, you don't want to be running around the corner.
No lanes, a bazillion corners, way too much verticality on every single map, and they all turned into the same blob in the desert.
Call of Duty has just sent me a message on WhatsApp about Black Ops 6. Hello, welcome to a new show presented by Jake and Guzz. It's the XDefiant show. For those a little bit unfamiliar as to who we are, we're both casters from Rainbow Six Siege. We're Ubisoft fans, I guess you could say, and we're making our way over to XDefiant to see what all the fuss is about. Guzz, for you, you've been playing this quite extensively back in the beta and now with its release. You've been a big fan. For me, I'm kind of like an old COD head from back in the day. I grew up on Modern Warfare 1, 2, into Ghosts even, then into Black Ops, all of those kind of CODs. So there's a bit of history here from both of us and 2 different perspectives.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of XDefiant for quite some time over the last couple of years during the testing. I feel like I've been relentlessly bugging you and everyone else about jumping onto this game. So far, I'm already like level 50 plus, 120 plus games, whatever it is. So I feel like I have a decent grasp on the game so far, and yeah, keen to discuss it. The point of this show is really going to be sort of like a hub for people to get updates on the game, just open the discussion up really to the community as well, and hopefully, fingers crossed, the game can thrive. I think it has the potential to do pretty well.
Yeah, for those a bit unfamiliar with our other podcasts that we like to do pertaining either to people in particular on the Jake and Guzz show or Siege on the Siege show. We love community involvement and feedback. We have a Discord if you'd like to be a part of it. Patreon link up above, where of course we'll have far more discussions and you can get your questions asked directly to us and get your thoughts heard. Also just down below in the comments, and we'll typically feature them throughout the majority of our episodes. And for us as well, we like to keep things light, positive, but we are not afraid to speak the truth, get into the harsh truths as well. And we speak very candidly. We don't hold back. We have no allegiances whatsoever. And unfortunately, we actually begin our first episode off regarding XDefiant, with looking at some negatives along with the positives. That's definitely going to be the case for our shows. We don't shy away from the negatives, and so much so we'll kind of kick things off with, what's been a very intriguing launch. You've got it listed here as the troubled launch. I don't know if trouble is the right word, because when you kind of look at it categorically, the numbers have been great, like in terms of the amount of people playing, and the activity continues to rise. But there were server issues on opening day and matchmaking issues, but all of these were eventually fixed anyway. And I feel like whenever a new game comes out, these are typical, gamer issues.
Yeah, noting that it probably surpassed Ubisoft's own expectations. It may not have been scaled properly, but they jumped on it pretty quickly. So the main issue was that you could load into the game, you could connect to the servers, but matchmaking services were pretty much broken for the first 2-3 hours. I was just relentlessly sitting there spamming error, QQ, error. Eventually they got through, I think, because in Australia it launched at 3 a.m. Eventually got through at 5 or 6 or whatever the case was. Ended up then playing for 6-7 hours straight, having a good time. So yeah, a bit of a rocky launch, but it's been consistent since, as far as I'm aware, at least on Australian times that I've been queuing. Matchmaking in the server has been up the entire time, which has been really good to see outside of the scheduled update. So yeah, it's been good. And as reported by a couple of outlets, over 3 million unique players and up to 300k concurrents. And that was before the weekend. And I have on good word, very good word, that those numbers have more than doubled since, again, surpassing Ubisoft's own expectations. Wow. So the launch of this game has been incredibly positive, and I think really puts to rest the big discussion that we had heading into this launch, and it did my head in seeing it on Twitter relentlessly, was they've got to stop testing this game. They've just got to get it in people's hands, yada, yada. People are going to forget about it. The game's going to die. Not the case. It's blown up. It's done really well. It's gotten out far ahead of Black Ops 6, which oddly enough has magically popped out of nowhere now in response to XDefiant, no doubt. And has given Ubisoft this 6-month window, or probably less, probably closer to 4-month window, to really fucking nail this game home and ingrain it in people. before COD comes along and is that, competition that they're looking to try and take down.
Yeah, it's intriguing. Agree. I think the numbers have been great. I think there was comments regarding the marketing for this, and I agree with a lot of those comments. I think the marketing was quite hush-hush, like it wasn't sort of just plastered everywhere throughout the internet where it's like, hey, this is coming out, this is going to be big, this is what you're going to get. It was kind of like, I don't want to use the word soft launch, but to some degree along those lines in terms of its release, where it was just finally like, okay, we're going to press the button, rather than we're going to announce a release date, we're going to put out trailers, we're going to plaster with advertising. It was just sort of like, all right, it's finally ready, let's just put it out. And I think that's a really good thing. And I think that the biggest challenge ahead now for Ubisoft is the fact that in 4 months, when the new Call of Duty comes out and the majority of the people, like 90% of the player base who plays this game, arguably are Call of Duty players, it's very safe and very homely to go back to what you know and love. And if the next Call of Duty is good, like that will be a very easy retain rate for Activision. Like for them, it becomes or Treyarch. I don't know who does it anymore. In terms of
the next release.
If it's Black Ops, if it's Black Ops, it's Strike. It's a lot easier for them to probably retain that player base because it's like safety. It's like going home. And if home is just an even little bit better than what it was previously, they'll take that. And so I think that for XDefiant, this is going to be the hardest stretch. 4 months, you've got to be perfect. You basically want them to get Black Ops, buy it, play it, and be like, why am I playing this? I'm just going to go back to XDefiant. And that's what you want. That's when you'll know if XDefiant wins, if that ends up happening. So in 8 months' time, 9 months' time, if XDefiant is beating Black Ops 6, is it really Black Ops 6?
Yeah.
How many Black Ops are there? Bloody hell. If it's beating Black Ops 6, then, then a healthy future, I think, awaits for XDefiant. So the next, 8, 9 months is going to be interesting.
I feel like we'll probably talk about this towards the end of the episode, so I don't want to ramble on too much, but it doesn't need to beat Black Ops, and everyone's saying that, XDefiant needs to beat COD, or is it the COD killer? I think it's looking at it from the wrong perspective. Competitor. And if it competes and it does well, that is good for everybody because it's going to push fucking Activision to finally get their shit together because COD has just been shit for the last 5-10 years. And it also will push Ubisoft to improve their product as well. So it's a win-win. That's why competition in a free market is so good because it leads to people getting their shit together. So
I think we need a new tactical
if at the very least this pushes Activision to get their shit together and XDefiant dies, well, I'll be happy with that.
Yep. Let's go into the game itself and really kind of give our thoughts on where it sits. So factions, to kind of just get into the core basis of the game, essentially your classes, if you will. Some minor choices regarding the abilities, Guzz, but for the most part, you've got... I'm going to be very careful with this first one. Libertad, Phantoms, Echelon, Cleaners, and then DedSec to kind of begin with. We've already kind of seen the roadmap. We'll talk about that later. More factions to come. What's your initial thoughts, though? Because I think, typically with a game like this, a COD shooter, it's very easy. You want to try and differentiate a little bit. And classes is kind of an hero shooter, if you will, is the way to kind of go down. It's interesting they're called factions rather than like classes. Like, kind of, what's your thoughts on really the whole system?
Yeah, so I guess the first important thing to note is that each faction is from a specific Ubisoft title. So like Libertad is Far Cry, for instance, and then you've got like Cleaners from Division, and that trend continues. I feel like that's kind of a cool way to, establish the ecosystem and tap into existing IPs and gives the characters a bit of nuance and individuality. I think my biggest concern when I first saw XDefiant as attacked on hero shooter, or however you really want to describe it, in the arena shooter genre, was balancing, because it can be really difficult in these types of games to get it down pat. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it's far from perfect at the moment. We'll talk about some of those issues as we go through each one. But my initial reaction, 100 plus games in or whatever, level 50, is that generally speaking, the balance and the counterplay that is on offer, even currently in the no skill-based matchmaking lobbies, is actually quite good. And I think especially when ranked eventually arrives in that 4v4 format, there's actually going to be really good stuff on offer where with just a couple of tweaks, there's not going to be anything completely overpowered, but each ability does feel very distinct and fun to use as well, which for me is it's a difficult balance to find in literally any game, is being fun and not being overpowered and the only singular meta. And that even filters down to the guns, which I think there's enough variety as well. So my initial thoughts is the faction system is quite strong. I think it works well, and it is that point of difference, to a Call of Duty, and its implementation seems pretty good. And some of the feedback and stuff that was taken on during the betas and the closed alphas has, eventually fills it into the live build, and indicative that the developers are listening quite actively to feedback, and they'll continue to be, tuned as required.
Yeah, and I think if you can start well in terms of the balance, and like out of the gates, they're all playing nicely together, that really sets the tone moving forward. Then it's all about just when the addition of new factions comes into the game, it's far easier to integrate if you've already kind of got a settled core, because you can kind of use that as a as the canvas where you're implementing this new faction. You're like, well, how does it perform similar to everyone else, who are all quite similar in their balance? So if it's like super like behind, then that's pretty evident it needs to be buff, and vice versa if it's kind of super in front. So yeah, very curious to kind of see what the future factions will look like, and the way that that system's going to continue to evolve with time. My hope is that it probably doesn't turn into like a full-blown like Overwatch, where like the abilities far outweigh the gunplay, for example. I really don't want that to be a thing.
It should be what Valorant fucking said in their initial marketing ploy, which was the gunplay takes precedence over abilities, or whatever the line was. Clearly that's not the fucking case, and they went off the rails already.
Not anymore, at least. Yeah. That's a really good point though, because Valorant started off in that fashion.
Power creep just got insane.
Yeah, the abilities, if you kind of think back to OG Valorant, like it was, your flashes and your smokes, your Counter-Strike utility, if you will. But I think that then, with time, the power creep ended up so mumuch so that you end up in a 1v1 arena with someone. Like, what the hell fuck is going on? So yeah, that's a really good example. I hope with time that you don't see XDefiant go down that road. Like, I don't want to be seeing someone pop some ultra that just like wipes half the server. Or does something too outlandish. It needs to all be quite self-contained. It needs to just be a small little addition to your character. But your gunplay and your movement and all of those kind of skill levels are what separates you, and not the fact that you can just press an ability. Speaking of something that maybe is a little bit overpowered, is the snipers. Now, in terms of Call of Duty, it's always been a kind of hot topic and debate, I think, regarding like snipers, and we all know about the COD montages pertaining to like your 360 no scopes and things like that. It's where it all kind of stemmed from. Do you think they're a little bit too strong at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I initially saw the discourse about snipers, and the immediate thing that popped in my mind was sort of I guess maybe like the post Black Ops 2 era, where as time went on with the Call of Duty releases, snipers became slower and slower and less mobile, and quickscoping fell more and more off the radar. At least that was what I was, feeling as, playing and watching those games. And then jumping into XD, the fact that you can kind of run around quickscope, I was like, shit, this is actually, really fun. But the more you play against it, you begin to quickly realize that the severe lack of flinch at like a medium range, you just cannot outgun a sniper fast enough, and it leads to some frustrating instances where you may have the jump on somebody with your movement, your positioning, you're landing those first couple of shots, and then you get wiped because they're able to just hold essentially still and one tap you. Now that, as far as I'm aware, has been acknowledged by the developers. They're looking into solutions for that. So hopefully by adding a little bit of flinch, we can see that rectified. And just quickly circling back in terms of factions, probably also the most pressing balancing discussion around that, which is going to be a lot of the discussions throughout this is balancing, but the Intel suit for the Echelon class. So for those unaware, the Intel suit, it's a regenerative ability. You click a button, you and the rest of your team get wall hacks within that radar zone, which is relatively large. So I think the sizing of that zone probably needs to be reduced. And I'd also like to see the ability for teammates to also get that information to be removed as well. This is a similar case to what we saw for anyone that's played Siege, Lion back in the day. Being able to relay all that information is insanely powerful, and it's even more so because you can't stand still and counter the Intel suit either. And I believe it also works against the Ghillie suit, which is the other Echelon ability. So the Intel suit is just incredibly strong at the moment, and alongside snipers are probably the two biggest balancing concerns at the moment that need to be looked into.
Yeah, I think with any new game, you're going to kind of begin with a set level on things, and then you kind of tweak it and change it and adjust it. That's going to be the case for a lot of different things, snipers and abilities, and where kind of the factions maybe sit. And then you've even got some other things like the camera shake, for example, right? Like apparently it's just too intense at the moment.
Yeah, so I mean that's due to a couple of problems with the game. The nade spam at the moment is quite strong. Now, I, over the last couple of days, have really been focusing in on playing the Occupy mode, so the King of the Hill mode. That's where I find the most enjoyment because it's, quite objective-based and the pacing stuff's really enjoyable. But the nade spam is insane, and there's no trophy system equivalent in the game at the moment. Maybe we'll get Jaeger from Siege one day, I'm not sure. But there's no direct ability to protect yourself against those projectiles outside of moving. And obviously once those nades come through, you get that screen shake effect, and it's so strong and feels so unfair if you enter a gunfight during it that it's just not particularly fun to play with. And we're probably going to reference Siege quite a bit throughout this particular show, but one thing they did, because again there's a lot of explosives in that game that shook the screen, they introduced two additional modes, which was reduced, so you get a little bit of screen shake, so you get that information, but it's not too crazy. It's not like you're in the middle of a fucking earthquake, or you can turn it off completely. And so it would be nice to maybe see those options given, or at the very least make it just lesser for everybody. And I'm not sure people would appreciate that, because it's, at the end of the day, it's an arena shooter, so I think competitiveness should take precedent over any fucking argument for realism, which I think would be weird in a game like this, but might happen. So yeah, hopefully the screen shake gets reduced, and later down the line we see a proper faction to counter nade spam as well.
Moving on to some of the positives, which has been surrounding the conversation of the movement within the game itself. I actually had I shit you not, had a TikTok this morning that popped up. That was actually a nade shot talking about the movement and how clean it was, and that was being a big comparison point to Call of Duty, as the majority of the game will be. With that, in Call of Duty, it felt a little stiff. Like you almost like kind of stuck in mud, slow to move. The momentum wasn't quite where it maybe needed to be when you're playing well and you're moving around, versus what you get in XDEFIANT, where you can kind of get on a bit of a roll, move fast, keep the momentum going, and just genuinely really nice, clean movement. I mean, I think that is always going to be something that in a game like this has to be on point. When we kind of talk about the gunplay and snipers, movement is really in the same category as any other kind of skill that pertains to an XD or a Call of Duty.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of the movement since the very beginning. It feels fluid enough that you can leverage movement to better yourself in gunfights and navigate around the map. It feels good, but it's not so far to the extreme where it's like you're sliding around on ice. And that's where it gets pretty annoying to play against. One of the biggest complaints that we're seeing at the moment, I think there was a pretty prominent video that came out that Mark Rubin, the game director, actually addressed publicly on Twitter, talking about air strafing. So essentially what the video was saying is, if you keep your boots on the ground, you get the advantage of being able to strafe left and right to avoid the shots of your opponent. If you go in the air, well, then you introduce the vertical aspect where they need to track you up or down. In XDEFIANT, though, you can kind of do both, because you can jump in the air, and say you're jumping this way, you can shift your momentum midway through an air strafe. That introduces another axis that some players are not enjoying playing against. I don't know if the right answer is to remove air strafing entirely. Bunny hopping is another hot topic at the moment, where you can essentially just continue to jump without, a big sway penalty. And so that probably also needs to be looked at. As far as I'm aware, again, the devs have responded. They've been very, very open publicly, and have responded that it's something that's under investigation. And so, yeah, we'll see. Does air strafing persist? Will bunny hopping persist? How much of this is also related to netcode? Is that making it more challenging to enter these engagements and is exacerbating this problem? I'm not entirely sure. It's always such a difficult balance. Movement is such a hot topic in arena shooters. It has been for the finals. It has been for Call of Duty for years now. How much should players be able to express their skill through movement, what kind of cap does there need to be where it doesn't get too intense. I don't know. I think XDefiant's struck an okay balance, but air strafing and bunny hopping certainly needs to be looked into. And with the netcode hopefully improving, does it need to be removed? I don't quite know. It's difficult to say.
Yeah, I was going to kind of take that and talk about then the Hitreg and the netcode, because if you've kind of got movement like that, but the netcode isn't maybe up to scratch, then it really becomes a nuisance and it's quite bothersome to play against. And I mean, I kind of want your thoughts, because you played since beta, so you've kind of seen the development of this game. Has it improved? Is it where it needs to be? Is it close to that of Call of Duty and other shooters of the like?
Yeah, so again, referencing Rainbow Six, which had a really rough launch with Hitreg. I've got however many thousands of hours on that game now. I'd say it has probably some of the best Hitreg going around, but it doesn't have the same jumping mechanics, etc. So that probably saves it a little bit. It's certainly not on that level. The last Call of Duties I mainly played with like MW1 and MW2 in the modern era. I'd say that it's still lagging behind that. Compared to the 2 public tests that I played, though, it was a massive improvement. I remember the first one in particular where they had already fixed the netcode on a private build, but the public build they released for the test itself was an older one. The netcode was shit. Like, it was really bad. You were just getting ghosted around walls, like up to a couple of seconds around walls. It was actually horrible. And so it's come a long, long way since then. And I'm sure that was probably why the game got delayed to try and improve that. So it still needs fine-tuning. I'm playing on 10, 20, 30 ping at most on Oz servers. I don't know if it's on a server to server or game to game basis where it sometimes feels more off than others. I don't quite know yet, but there's definitely gunfights where it just doesn't feel right. And again, especially if you're versing good players who are moving well, it feels even worse. So people can come at me and say it's a skill issue, but I think from the sentiment I've seen, it's a pretty common complaint at the moment. So hopefully that's something that's improved over time. I'm sure something like networking multiplayer games with hundreds of thousands of players is incredibly fucking hard work, but they've acknowledged it, they're aware of it, and hopefully, we see it continue to improve.
What about cheaters for you? If you ran into them in terms of XDefiant, is it largely an issue? I know that for a fact that really from day dot, there's already cheats for the game, but they're also getting banned. So, I mean, I guess that's good and bad news to a degree. We're not too privy to information regarding like XDefiant's ways in which they're going to be able to deal with cheaters. My hope is that it's not going to be as big of a problem in other titles. You kind of look where Rainbow Six Siege is at the moment. It's not looking great. Free-to-play game, it's going to be difficult to win that arms race. But, I mean, I guess the question is, have you kind of ran into them to begin over, the launch week?
Yeah, so as far as I'm aware, the Siege game is on an older Anvil engine, which was used for Assassin's Creed. Uses the Battle Eye anti-cheat, whereas XDefiant is built on, it's called Snowdrop or whatever the newer one is, still using Battle Eye. I saw on day one that there were players posting that they got banned for cheating, so the anti-cheat seems to be working to some degree. I remember vividly on day one, I had 2 players running around every single lobby I had them in, 4 or 5 games consecutively. They were going 50-3, multiple times. I don't know. You can't confirm with cheating. There's no kill cams at the moment, which is another, problem. So it's very difficult to actually confirm that. So maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know. I can't look at their account and find out if they ended up getting banned or not. So I guess it's good and bad. When you're making a multiplayer game, full stop, there's going to be cheaters. You make it free to play. Well, holy shit, you're in for a fun time. So I don't know how long the damn wall's going to hold up, what kind of anti-cheat measures are in place, and how good they're going to be. I guess it's only a case of fingers crossed. Yeah, honestly, outside of that first day and those couple of players, I really haven't been that particularly suspicious on any other players. Now, there is this utility spam glitch at the moment. If I remember, I'll put up the clip where I don't know how players are doing it, but they die and drop 30 proxy nades. And in my case, it actually crashed the server. I thought initially this may have been a hack, but it's been confirmed again by Mark Rubin that it is a bug. And so, yeah, as long as that's getting patched, we're good. I'm not too concerned about cheaters yet, but cheaters are in the business of making money, and if there's the millions of people playing that has been reported, well, you can bet that they're going to be looking to make millions of dollars. So, yeah, I wish the development team all the best, but they're going to know this shit better than anyone else. So,
yep. Interesting topic, this next one. One that I'm probably a little bit more intrigued about personally, regarding the fact that there's no kill streaks or anything apparent close to that, put out by Apollo, who has basically said the biggest problem he feels right now is the fact that there's almost a lack of purpose within the gameplay, within the matches. And I would tend to agree with that. I think we maybe sit on two different sides of this. I think that for me, you kind of want that short-term dopamine hit within the game. You got the overarching side of things, which is just like the game itself, but then you want something within that. And then there's also the even bigger, you know, where you might be like looking to get a certain cosmetic or certain upgrade or unlocks or whatever, or, you know, prestiges and things like that. So you've got long-term plans, medium term. Where's the short term? Where's the little dopamine hit within the game itself? Something that you can kind of look towards, keep track of. Like I remember playing back in the day, and it was always like, you know, if you're trying to get a helicopter or a Harrier strike and you're 1 or 2 kills off, you start to play a little bit more cautious. You know, you don't want to be running around the corner. You know, and it changes your gameplay a little bit, and it just makes it more fun within the game itself. And then when you do get that and you do unlock that, that is a dopamine hit. That is just like, hell yeah. I got, you know, there's the reward, right? But I don't even know if it's about like a reward for doing well. I don't even think you need that, because you could have something like, oh, well, you just get your ultra faster. But that's boring. Like, you're not looking forward to like, oh, I get to use my ultra like 10 seconds earlier, whatever. So I think having something that you can kind of get, maybe it enhances one of your abilities or passive or whatever, or something very separate. And the beautiful thing is, because of factions, you can make it faction specific. So you could have kill streaks that pertain to the faction, that you kind of get something extra. So it's like you've got your ultra, you've got your abilities, you've got your passive, and then you can choose from these kill streaks. You don't even have to call them kill streaks, because you probably wouldn't in this day and age. It's just the way that, you know, video games are going. I don't know what you'd call them, but I think it's something. Score streaks, yeah. I think it's something that is needed. I'd love to see them implement, and if they are going to implement it, they kind of need to do it ASAP. Like, this is not something that you kind of linger on. Even if it's just simply like, we hear you and it's coming, and maybe that's something that they can kind of bring up. But if it's not something they're going to do at all, I would like them to say so, because then that is actually, being completely honest, an element of gameplay that people may then prefer in Call of Duty, for example, and then that might actually be a big decision-making element for them.
Yeah, I think I probably do sit a little bit more on the other side of the fence for this argument. I certainly agree that the emotional and, like, I guess, physical response inside of, you know, a Call of Duty lobby when you're popping off. I remember getting my, like, first, I think it was my only swarm in, like, Black Ops 2, which was, like, the max streak. It was like, holy shit, this is the best thing I've ever done in my life. But being on the receiving end of that kind of feels like shit a little bit.
Yeah, but it's so rare though. At least
people
something
just leave
like
the
that,
lobby.
like a nuke level
cool,
event is not that, well, or at least shouldn't be that common.
Yeah.
At least, I mean, maybe in this day and age, it would be a bit more common than, say, back in the day, like an MW2, original MW2. You weren't running into nukes every 2 seconds. I'll tell you that much. Like, if anything, people were more annoyed about like noob tubes and stuff, but nukes certainly were not the issue. And maybe it's all about just kind of tweaking the numbers. Like, maybe you find that kind of magical number, or even still, you don't need to have like a mass level event ability. Like, at the end of a kill streak, you can still have kill streaks without nukes, or, you know, that kind of like level to it. You can still, even if it's just even basic to like a 3-5-7 streak, and you just swap those 3 out and that's it. And even after 7, it's just nothing else. It still gives you what essentially Apollo's talking about, that short-term dopamine, something to look forward to, something to build towards. I've got my 6th kill. Can I get my 7th? Bam, Harrier, you know, whatever. So, I think the balance of it is irrelevant, because you just find the balance. It's all about the implementation, whether you have it or you don't have it. The balance is a different topic.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if it's implemented, though, at what point is too many? Do we get to too many abilities? Right, you've already got, you know, your projectile. If you're on DedSec, that regens. Then you've got your specialized ability plus your ultra plus score streaks onto that. then it would, in my eyes, probably detract away from, the actual really solid core of this game, which is the arena shooter mechanics. Now, again, I sit on the other side of the fence here. And like I mentioned before, I've been queuing a lot of Occupy because I really enjoy those objective-based modes and playing for the win. I don't really care that much about the individual glory of score streaks. I love, farming MVPs. I think I'm up to like 30 or whatever of my, 80 odd wins or whatever it is at this point. So I do enjoy that grind. But I find enjoyment from, seeing the number at the very top tick up to 250. I'm not that concerned about the dopamine hit of Killstreaks, but I could certainly recognize that as being a point that others don't enjoy, and especially when you're talking to the COD community as well, because they've been conditioned to that for so long.
I just got a message on WhatsApp. This is live, by the way. Call of Duty has just sent me a message on WhatsApp about Black Ops 6.
Did I get that?
Is that not... hello? Is anyone listening?
I didn't get that.
What?
The Call of Duty marketing campaign has been pretty crazy, by the way. But
I've never had that before.
They want you to shut up and stop talking about XD.
Someone's listening. Someone's listening. That's all. That's scary. Tinfoil hat. Let's move forward because I'm scared of Treyarch now. Map design and where that at for XDefiant, it goes back to the core roots, 3-lane map system. The balance seems to be quite good. I think that I haven't really heard any complaints regarding to the maps themselves, which in a game like this is clearly a very important part of the game. Are they distinct enough though? Are they memorable? You think about Call of Duty maps, like the peak of them, everyone knows Nuketown, and there's certain maps that you just know off the back of your head and they're very distinct. Do you think there are maps like that within XDefiant right now?
Well, firstly, I would say that I would describe maps in an arena shooter as being like an official in a sports match. If no one is talking about them negatively, it's like an observer in an esports game. It means that they're doing a really fucking good job. And I have seen very few people complain about the maps, which I interpret and I believe means they've done a really fucking good job. One of my biggest gripes and one of the biggest reasons I turned away from Call of Duty was not really the gunplay or the movement or whatever. I felt like that was actually quite solid and may in some parts actually excel against XD, but the maps turned to fucking dog shit. There was like no lanes, a bazillion corners, way too much verticality on every single map, and they all turned into the same blob in the desert and was so fucking boring. The majority of them, at least. So this has been a nice change of fresh air with good, solid, fundamental map design. Each one, though, still with distinct structural differences. As you mentioned, you could maybe make the argument that artistically they can sometimes blur the lines a little bit together. To that, I would agree. But I think they all have enough differentiating factors and all have, for the most part, almost every map has really solid fundamental map design that works as well for multiple modes. So I've got nothing but really good things to say about the map design. And like we're going to talk about in the roadmap, the fact that they are planning to do 3 new maps every 3 months is fucking crazy. So I hope that the quality of them doesn't dip.
That's nuts. That's insane. We'll get to that shortly. We've got a couple of other things we need to quickly touch on though before we talk about the roadmap. The absence of skill-based matchmaking. I'm a big fan of this. I hate games that have this stupid system. I understand why it was developed and implemented into a lot of games. I absolutely understand it. No one likes joining a lobby and just being little Timmy and you're 1-16 and these guys are too good and you're sitting there like, why am I playing against these guys? These guys are treating it like it's an esports match. Absolutely agree. No one likes that. Unfortunately, that's just the harsh reality, and just get better. Like, to be completely blunt, like, just get better. Like, you will get better by playing against these players and improving and learning, and then it feels more rewarding when you then kind of are getting shit on to then start improving and starting to become quite equal to that. And then you guess what? The rewards of that is you then in turn get to become Giga Timmy, Giga Chad Timmy, and start to shit on all the little Timmys with time and time spent into it. Now, the way that they've done it in this game, I think, is actually maybe the best iteration of it, where in terms of when the lobby gets put together, it's all kind of irrelevant. Like, there's no skill-based matchmaking. But then within the lobby itself, it's like, okay, well, this is where everyone kind of sits, and we'll balance the teams. I think that's perfect. I think that is absolutely perfect. I love that iteration. I I would assume you put a lot of hours into this game right now. You felt the majority of the games have been quite balanced.
Yeah. I think Ubisoft have made some very decisive game design choices in XDefiant, and one of the big ones being, you know, the absence or the next iteration of skill-based matchmaking. And it is a risk. Is there a world in which, you know, newer, more inexperienced players are going to be turned away? They don't, you know, funnel into the microtransaction or into the store, which is the reason Call of Duty does it for player retention. I don't know. I would absolutely love in 12 months to, you know, compare like player retention data between XDefiant and Call of Duty. That would be super intriguing. But in terms of my own personal experience, it's been very positive. I've had plenty of lobbies where I'm just absolutely farming and like everyone is bots, but I've also had some where it's incredibly competitive and a few where, you know, we're just getting slammed. Like you kind of just roll with the punches and, you know, you continue to improve, iterate your loadouts, find new spots in maps, new routes, etc. Like I feel like I have been pushed to improve, and I think that this preseason is going to offer that opportunity. And what we will probably find is that a lot of the sweats, like myself, will eventually just jump into ranked, and that's where they're, you know, going to be sweating out from the majority anyway. So I don't think the casuals need to be too concerned, and the welcome playlist exists there with skill-based matchmaking actually enabled if that's, you know, the experience you want to be onboarded. So
even for yourself, and this is the way that I would feel, I don't know if you'll agree, but you might, when you are playing a game like a mode like ranked in games, sometimes it can be a little bit daunting, especially when skill-based matchmaking is the thing. You want to know why that is because of skill-based matchmaking. The reality is everyone on your team and everyone on the opposing team should be within a pretty similar skill level. That's what the system is trying to do, which means you need to play utterly perfectly because you need to pull your weight. If you are playing a game like XDefiant and you're playing ranked, you might be in a lobby that's actually quite stacked and you are the shitter. But you'll be on balanced teams and others will actually carry you. How often do you get carried in Siege?
Well, as far as I'm aware,
not that often.
As far as I'm aware, skill-based matchmaking will be enabled in ranked, so it's not going to
be...
Oh, it is? It's not in...
Oh, well, then never mind.
It won't be the same. It won't be the same system as casual. That's at least my understanding, although details are, you know, somewhat scarce. As I believe ranked is launching with the first season, maybe.
See, the only reason I find that strange is because of the way that they actually do it in casual, I think is done right. Like in terms of putting the groups together and then balancing.
But I don't think it should be like that in ranked. I think ranked should have that, you know, sweat environment, especially if the game is to have longer term aspirations.
I find far less of an argument for ranked. I 100% agree with that.
But the problem has been with COD, there is no differentiation. The skill-based matchmaking is that fucking tuned for casual. It's the exact same as ranked, so you don't have that, you know, opportunity to do what you want in casual. And even just gameplay aside, especially being from O servers ourselves, matchmaking is so important. And I have turned off crossplay. I have turned on the same input matchmaking. So I'm only versing keyboard and mouse on PC, on Australia, on one game mode at 3 a.m. And I'm almost instantly popping lobbies in like under 30 seconds, under a minute. And that's just, you wouldn't get that in COD. So that's, for me, probably been the biggest positive, just even outside of the, you know, the sandbox environment itself. The ability to just get into a fucking game quickly has been very welcomed. And then if I want to sweat, if I want to play ranked, I'll happily queue for 4 or 5 minutes, get a balanced game, really test myself there once that opens up.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think that's, I can't argue with that. I think, yeah, ranked should be, for all intents and purposes, where things like skill-based matchmaking is a little bit more relevant. I think for casual, it should never be in any kind of casual game or any kind of casual game mode. Absolutely. Moving on to the last two topics before we get to the roadmap, which is essentially around like weapon progression, battle pass, the monetization for the game. There has been complaints that it's a little bit too slow regarding the battle pass. I guess also maybe the weapon progression. And then I kind of want your thoughts as well as to where the monetization is looking to be regarding, you know, how expensive the shop items are, the battle pass, those kind of things, and get your thoughts on all of that before we get into the roadmap. Yeah,
so first of all, in terms of weapon XP over the weekend, I think it was about 4 days total, something to that effect. They doubled it, and it definitely felt more comfortable there. At its default 1x rate, it is quite slow. Again, I've been playing the game a lot, and it really does take time to upgrade weapons, often like a level at a time, or maybe 2 levels at a time, or whatever the case may be, depending on what kind of boosters you have on. So hopefully that does get fine-tuned a little bit. Again, I don't think you should be able to just load up the game and instantly have a gun maxed out within a couple days. I think there should be an element of, you know, grinding away and experimenting, etc. But it probably is a little bit on the slow side at the moment, so I'd like to see that probably get tuned going forward. As for the monetizations, obviously XDefiant is a free-to-play game. I have, as I mentioned, played like over 100 games plus level 50. I've not spent a single cent on this game. I unlocked DedSec by grinding the XP. All the weapons I have, most of them are from like the friend referral system. So I just haven't touched it yet. I may in the future. The battle pass is only a pre-season pass, so it's scaled down. It's only 50 tiers. I believe it's meant to be 90 in a full season. And the shop has like a daily and I think a weekly rotation. The items, they're fucking expensive. And I wouldn't say many of them are particularly great, but I would suspect that they'll get better in time. So the monetization is pretty average. It's quite expensive, but it's probably actually comparative to your likes of Valorant and Call of Duty, although again, those items are probably higher in quality. So yeah, on the balance of everything, okay. I think you can earn, though, the coins back on the Battle Pass. So the Battle Pass itself, probably not bad, but specific items in the shop are, yeah, pretty criminally overpriced, but they'll get tuned if needed. They'll see the data.
I think it's becoming a very common thing in gaming that cosmetics are like, okay, well, you guys don't like it when we put things in the shop that is like pay to win, but we need to make money. And for those that do want to buy cosmetics, we're going to have to put the price up on that. And if that is the, well, ironically, price to pay, so that games are not pay to win, then so be it.
Yep. I don't want to go back to like 2006 where it's like literally pay to win fucking arena shooters. That was horrible.
2006?
Oh, like whatever. Wasn't there was like over that like 2000, I don't know why I said 06 specifically, but like over that like 2010s like early period, there were like a bunch of like free shooters and stuff that came out.
Yeah.
And they're literally pay to win.
Yeah.
And even Call of Duty fell down that fucking rabbit hole with like Advanced Warfare and the crates and all that shit, and that really turned me off that. Mm-hmm. So if XDefiant can avoid pay to win, which they've done with Siege, very welcomed. Very, very welcomed. If shit's overexpensive and people are dumb enough to buy it, well, half their life.
Yeah, 100%. The whales will be supporting the system. Onto the roadmap, though, for XDefiant. They've put out a year one roadmap. We'll put it up on your screen now for those that maybe haven't seen it, or at least a reminder. So within every single season, and this is one thing I like, every season will be the same. You get a new faction, you get 3 new weapons, you get 3 new maps, and you get a new battle pass. Then there's a couple of things down the bottom in terms of new modes, competition, player protection, comfort features. So, I mean, we've seen a lot of roadmaps for a lot of games. The fact that every single season is the same amount, I like that. Like, there's no differentiation. Like, we're not saying like season 1's bigger than season 2, but then season 3's bigger than season 4. So kind of like this up and down thing. Every single season, you know what you're going to get. New faction, new weapons to play with, new maps to play with. That's always fun. That's exciting, something to look forward to. I think they've done it well. I think the layout of it is good in terms of the way they've done the seasons. I can't find really any critique here. That is a hefty amount of maps coming into the game. Like, that is 12 maps throughout the first year being added in. Plenty of new weapons, 4 factions, which, by the way, like, you know, we kind of see with Valorant and Overwatch to a degree, even your MOBAs, you don't want to add too many. I don't think you want to go down the route of adding like 2 new factions per season, because then it just starts to become completely overwhelming. I think 1 per season is fine. And even that, you know, if this becomes a game that has longevity and over the next 4 or 5 years, then you can end up with quite a lot more than just 5 factions. So you've got to be very careful and mindful of that. So I think it's a great roadmap. I think that should fill people with confidence that the game is going to clearly be supported, and there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tried and true method, right? Siege is now into year number 9. They've followed a very similar quarterly release schedule, which I think is really in that sweet spot. So many games are just all over the place in terms of their releases, and they also, you know, weight them differently. So I also, you know, appreciate the fact that you brought up they're all, you know, identical on paper, and should mean that every season is good. I think season 1 and 2, though, are absolutely critical, because those are going to be the 2, based on just rough estimates, that are going to fill in before/during the Black Ops 6 release. So looking down the line at things like modes and ranked and private matches, etc., all of those hopefully are towards Season 1, Season 2, and they can get those in, because I think those are going to be what, again, really get their claws into players and will, reward them for sticking it out. So the roadmap looks good. But yeah, will it go beyond year one? Who you really just don't know with these kinds of things. Black Ops 6 could wipe XDefiant off the map. It could double its popularity because it's shit. Both could coexist, which is probably the most likely outcome, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think the game has good foundations, and provided they continue to build upon it in this live service model that we've seen worked in Siege, I don't see any red flags yet that the game's going to, have a very short life. At least not yet. That could happen later, though, in 6 months.
The biggest thing, though, and probably one thing that we haven't mentioned in this, though, is that XDefiant is free to play. When you kind of think about, you're talking Black Ops 6. Well, within a year, we're talking then about Modern Warfare 11.
Well, actually, as we record this, it may have already been officially live. It probably will be by the time we post it, but allegedly it's going to be on Game Pass day one. So, again, it's not technically free to play, but it's like pseudo free to play.
Yeah. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Yeah. But I mean, what's been kind of the meta when you think about Call of Duty, when you think about like sports games for the last 20 years, has been this kind of yearly release cycle. And, what a lot of players have been kind of crying out for is more of a, I guess, live service where it's like, we don't want to have to keep paying. I guess in our case, 80, 90 Australian dollars or, 60, 70.
It's probably like 120 these days. I don't fucking know.
Yeah. I mean, every single year, when it's like the game doesn't change that much. Like fundamentally, what Black Ops 5, Black Ops 6, you could have just completely just put out Black Ops and added in new maps and new guns, and what's the fucking difference? No one plays campaigns. There are no campaigns anymore. From I don't even know if there was controversy. They're scaled down. They look like tiny little missions. So it's changed, and I think with that, what XDefiant has done, and yeah, if Black Ops 6 is going to be on Game Pass, and then in future they might create more of a live service, because like if you Call of Duty, like why not just call it Call of Duty? Done.
I guess that's what they've done to an
live
extent
service,
with like Warzone.
Call of Duty, you've got access to all of these maps. Like if I'm in charge, I would be. You know what is in right now in the 20s is Classic. You've got Classic World of Warcraft, you've got Classic RuneScape. A lot of games are kind of going back to their roots. If you're Call of Duty, and they've done remasters and things like that, right? I'm not talking about like just full-blown remasters. I'm just talking about release a game called Call of Duty. You make it a live service, and you add in all these guns and all these maps and all of these things, all these kill streaks from all of their games, and you can cycle them in and out. You can have seasons. So like in this season, these maps are in. Then in the next season, these maps are in, and it kind of keeps changing, and it becomes a constant. That's how you beat games like XDefiant in future. That's something that would be quite scary for Ubisoft, because Ubisoft don't have that bank. They don't have that vault that they can kind of go back into. But with a roadmap like this, you can build that vault pretty quickly in terms of maps, in terms of addition, in terms of bringing things in. And if Call of Duty is not smart enough to start to actually use their vault, then maybe there is a world in which this coexistence and this competition can go in favor of XD. But clearly, the competition that XD is going to provide, I think, is going to be a big boon for these arena shooter fans, because you're going to have both. It's not a case of like, oh, you can't play Call of Duty now because XDefiant's out. You're going to have a case, I think, in this instance, speaking more directly to Black Ops 6, people are going to go and play it. They're going to take a break from XDefiant. They're going to go play Black Ops 6. And then after a couple of months, they're going to go back to XDefiant. And then the next Modern Warfare comes out or whatever, and they'll go play that. And I think that's a cycle that Ubisoft is going to be like, yeah, we're happy to be in part of that cycle. We want them to go to Black Ops, get burnt out, come back to XD for a bit.
Because you can come back to XD at any time. It's going to be free forever.
Yep.
And the barrier of entry is nothing outside of maybe the battle pass for factions, right? So it's going to be a very interesting relationship, and it could get pretty bloody between Activision and Ubisoft. But that, again, like I was saying at the beginning of the episode,
if I'm an arena shooter fan, though, I'm loving it.
Yeah, exactly. It benefits everybody. It pushes both publishers to do better, and if anyone else enters into the game as well, they'll continue to improve. The finals will be, clinging on as well. Like, yeah, it's good for everyone.
Yep. We're going to the closing topics here. The biggest one of which, considering at least from our perspective, being esports casters, is very much the esports potential for this game. We want to be involved. We want to cast it. We want to try and be a part of the competitive side of this game. Your thoughts early on? Yes, no? Is it there? From your own perspective, maybe if you've seen people talking about it.
Well, I think it probably has to get broken down into two parts. The first part is the game, and the second part is the publisher. Because you can have an okay game, but if the publisher sucks ass at their esports model, it's not going to work out. Vice versa, if you have a good model but the game sucks, well, obviously it's not going to work either. So I think as a game, the fundamentals, the core, the foundation, quite solid. Now, obviously, there are some big things that need to be added to make this, competitively viable. Ranked, private lobbies, kill cams, caster cams, observer mode, etc. Like, that is an absolute must. So right now, day one, is esports or competitive XDefiant viable? No. We're literally seeing like kill races and shit being done as competition at the moment, which is just shit. So the answer no right now, but does it have potential going forward? I think so, yeah. And again, going back to Siege, another Ubisoft that has had a very, very, very successful esports model now for going on 7-8 years with really good integration in the store and good monetization and a healthy ecosystem and a very loyal fan base. I could potentially see that being cultivated in XDefiant. Is it going to be enough to maybe pull over like Call of Duty fans? I don't quite know, but I think it could cultivate its own fan base potentially. So I think to answer the question, yes, and I'm fairly certain that Ubisoft are aware of that possibility and have planned for that to potentially be the case at some point if the game can support it. I don't think Ubisoft are just going to shoehorn it in and like throw a bunch of money at it and see if it works. They're going to wait to see if the game performs and can sustain it, build it up from a grassroots level, kind of like Valorant did. And I think that model will probably work well, again, dependent on the game performing well.
You don't want to force it. You want grassroots to take off. You want players to get their hands on this, play it for a couple of months, and then start to get that itch, that competition. They've played ranked. Now they want to really go up against it. And you see, teams then being formed and being like, okay, we're going to go scrim these guys and let it happen naturally. Third-party organizers to then put on tournaments for these players. And then for Ubisoft to be like, okay, everyone's playing it competitively. Everyone wants to make this into a thing. Bam, we know what we got to do. Ecosystem's there.
Get
maybe
the orgs,
hire Blast,
get the
or
orgs,
whatever.
Leagues,
get the orgs
shop
and
integration.
And the good thing as well for Ubi, now mind you, the team that works on XDefiant is not the same team that works on Rainbow Six Siege, for example, but there is always going to be cross-pollination within Ubisoft. It's very easy for them to kind of, I don't know, hold an internal meeting and be like, okay, what did you guys do wrong that maybe we shouldn't do wrong, find out all the answers, yada, yada, yada. So I think they'd be able to, from the get-go, do it quite right. And if the hype is there, then the orgs will be there, and if the orgs are there, then the fans are there, and if the fans are there, the game is there. So yeah, I'm very curious to see how it develops. The last topic here for this episode, opening episode here for the XDefiant show, is regarding Mark Rubin's public-facing transparency. Now, what's interesting, it kind of reminds me of like Jeff Kaplan, if you remember when Overwatch came out. He was like the most public figure for all of Blizzard. I swear to God, for like maybe a year or two. Like, he was Blizzard. He was Blizzard Jesus. And in the end, I wouldn't say it backfired, but he did kind of become, because he was that public figure, when the problem started, because let me tell you, the start for Overwatch was fucking peachy. And then the problem started to come in. And then it's like Jeff this and Jeff that, Jeff Savis, and then Jeff's putting out videos. And then I think I remember someone did like a montage of like his first public video to then his last, and the dude went bald or like his hair receded like 10 inches. But I think it's a good thing. Does it pose future risk if like the game or he undelivers? Maybe, but what even is that risk? Like if something's gone wrong with the game, then something's already gone wrong anyway. So the negative will be there regardless. I think it's always really good to start off being transparent, to be honest, to be open, to build communication, to treat your fan base or your player base, sorry, with respect. And I think that's exactly what he's probably doing.
I mean, the biggest hurdle that XDefiant probably has is building that trust. Like, can people feel comfortable investing time and effort into the game, or is it going to die in 3 months? And I think having Mark Rubin with the amount of experience that he has is, I think people trust him to an extent. And so by being that public facing figure, it has been a positive. It's also even been in some of the official like marketing videos and stuff about them talking about, you know, being transparent and open to the community is one of their pillars. How much of that is in response to maybe Call of Duty going a little bit cold in the community department? Again, I don't know. It may have been a very deliberate and conscious decision to, again, differentiate from COD in that regard. If that's the case, smart play, and yeah, good luck to them. It could potentially backfire, but as you kind of say, right, if it's backfiring, well, the game's probably already screwed anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Exactly. Yeah, take the positives that you can get from it and kind of ride that wave for as long as possible, which is what we hope to do here at the XDefiant show. We hope everyone enjoyed this opening episode. Again, we want engagement. We love sentiment. Tell us where we may be wrong with some things. We want your opinions, your topics to be explored as well. If there's things you want us to talk about that we can kind of put into the next couple of episodes, that's exactly what we would like to do. You know, I've still got to get my hands on the game. I'm probably more inclined to focus on the competitive and esports side of it, whereas I think Guzz, you're probably a little bit more inclined to actually be far more of a participant. I'm just far too old for these.
You're over 30. You can't play an arena shooter once you get 30.
Mate, I can barely play World of Warcraft these days, but you know, it's something that I enjoy to watch. I grew up on this kind of shit, right? So like, I'm really itching and hoping the esports side of it is going to play out. Hopefully for you guys as well, that's something that you want. But yeah, let us know how you're enjoying the game, if you enjoyed the episode, any thoughts, suggestions moving forward, and hopefully we can see you in future episodes to come. As always, we do have a Patreon if you'd like to subscribe. We don't have exclusive content though from this particular episode, but maybe in future, if we do garner a bit of a fan base here for XDefiant, we will put out exclusive content regarding XD in future. Until the next episode though, hope everyone is enjoying the game, and we'll see you then.